Good morning from the Derbyshire hills. Firstly, just like to say thank you very much to everyone who's messaged with support and many comments about what I've been talking about what we've been through with Soundgas and what I've been through personally. It's much appreciated. I wanted to talk this morning about a little bit about the birth of Soundgas and where we come from and where we're going and why we do what we do. I think it can trace this right back to when I first started at a slightly advanced age getting involved in making music. We're talking about the early 90s. I was DJing from about 91, bought my first Atari and Roland W30 sampling workstation, probably 92, 93, and we set up our first studio, four of us together, around about 93, I think. The 90s are a little hazy, and we didn't have very much money, and so rather than having the all singing, all dancing, newest synths in the room, we were basically the only things we could afford were things like a Roland Juno 106. Actually, it was an HS60, my 106, which is a sort of grey thing with speakers. Moog Prodigy. We had Space Echo, a Space Echo that wasn't very good. I think our first tape echo was actually the Melos cartridge tape echo, which was really bad but kind of fun as well. MS10. The Maven. I think we had a CS5. And pretty much from the start, one of the guys in the studio, Mark, who's a really good producer, he wanted something very up to the minute. So he and his pal clubbed together and bought quite a high spec Roland JV 2080, I think it was, which had loads of sounds in it and was a real powerhouse at the time. But I never got on with it. I always, for me, I'm not into menu diving. It's for the same reason I'm not really into using soft synths. I've got some amazing soft synths. I've got the Arturia V collection, which has pretty much every synth you could wish for in it. But they don't resonate with me. I'm not a musician who can sit down at the keyboard, any keyboard, and play something. I don't sit down with the tune in my head and play it. I'm someone who enjoys putting things together and reacting to knobs, sliders, physical interaction with hardware. So the JV 2080 was something I barely ever used, and I always was looking for weird sounding things. I remember mid-period Stevie Wonder, when he was working with the guys Malcolm Cecil and the Tonto era of synths, Music of My Mind onwards. Those albums really still to this day some of my favourite records. And I was looking for those sort of effects, but with no budget whatsoever. So I do remember buying a very beat up, probably a Dunlop wah-wah, and a distortion overdrive or fuzz pedal. Can't remember exactly what it was. And that and the MS10, trying to sort of recreate the sound of Stevie Wonder, which, given how bad, I've learnt a bit in the ensuing sort of 30-something years how bad my playing was very optimistic. But it was a start, and it was that thing of trying to find different things and link them together to recreate something I'd heard, that I think that's sort of the start of what would eventually become Soundgas. And throughout the 90s, I was always pretty much swimming against the stream. We went digital. We ended up with an Apple Mac with audio, which was an incredible thing. Yet, I've said it before, the beats and the tracks I was making, the drums never sounded as good as they did from the Akai samplers. And the process was different. It was a much more visual thing, much less tactile, and for me it's always been about the tactile. That's why I'm such a sucker for old guitars, because you pick up an old guitar that sort of fits in your hand and makes you want to play, and I do, certainly for me, because I'm not a great guitar player, it makes me play better. A guitar that just fits, and I think it's the same with a lot of instruments, a lot of synths, and even effects. So from the early days in the 90s, I was seeking out. This was pre-internet. I was scouring the adverts in the local paper or in AdMag and finding, you know, I got a copycat fairly quickly and loved the fact that I could manipulate the spindle and speed it up and slow it down. All manner of half-broken things that were just it was just fun. And it's something. In fact, there was an Eno thing on that I saw yesterday. I think it was the Zane Lowe interview, where he talks about you, and Rick Rubin said the same. You play an instrument, and I think that sense of play is absolutely, for me, is at the heart of why I'm drawn to strange bits of equipment and very much hardware, because for me that is when I can stop thinking and start playing. Now, generations that have come since are absolutely at home with screens and computers, and for them they can play. You know, I know Mikey, who I work with, we DJ'd together and we made music together. He was working on a Commodore Amiga and then on Fruity Loops, and for him you could just see it was like he was playing a game. The way the speed at which he could program beats in Fruity Loops was incredible. It's not that I could program beats, and I did. I spent countless hours, days, months chopping up samples and then programming the beats. But it's never really felt. I'm not sure I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the results sometimes, but I didn't enjoy the process so much. I was happier when I was actually manipulating the samples and in the Akai, and then putting them through effects, and then messing about with the desk and sending to reverbs and delays. I think that was probably why dub has always resonated so strongly with me, because it's the studio, the mixing desk, the effects as an instrument, and that's why I love hardware. And that's so. Rewind a little bit. This is me talking about why Soundgas came to be and why we do what we do. It's a love of hardware and a love of the fact that you can put some pieces of hardware together and you play. You don't have to think about the menus. You just literally plug things in and see what happens, and it's a journey of discovery. I've always termed it the joy of sonic adventure. So when everyone else was going digital or buying virtual analog synths, we were buying old effects units that were, most of them, not working properly. It was years before I heard in fact, the first time I heard a 201 and Space Echo that sounded really good was it's probably only 7 or 8 years ago, when Dr. Hugh started working with us. He came recommended by Adrian Utley of Portishead. He'd worked with Portishead, Massive Attack, Robert Plant, and he knew how to make a Space Echo sound good. Before that, I'd been lucky enough to find 2 Mint RE501s, which at the time obviously had got less hours, so were in better condition than the 201s you'd find, and they sounded great, and I used them a lot. But as soon as I heard a 201 the way a 201 should sound, that was it. The 501s were going. So yeah, we in the 90s, and then I had my own studio, and it was always about trying to find interesting bits of gear. I had friends coming back, we're probably going into the early 2000s, have friends coming back from America. They've been on tour in America, coming back with electro-harmonics, guitar pedals, that, these enormous silver boxes that just looked so incredible and sounded amazing, and were so different to the little Boss pedals that we'd all known in England, and Mutron pedals, these enormous things. So that was around about the time when I first when sort of eBay was starting to be a thing, and I was DJing, and I used the money I was earning from DJing to buy things from America. So Soundgas started on eBay, and it was me buying stuff to try in the studio, and sometimes just buying more than one of something because they were there and they weren't expensive. I think Mutron Biphase, there was a really good exchange rate. I think they were about £250-300, maybe not even that. I can't remember. So I would buy stuff and I would play with it, and sometimes inevitably I'd either not like it, or I'd just find a better example and sell it. Binsons were the same. I found one completely by chance. This is a long time ago. Found one in the local ad mag. I thought I was going for an Echo Deck, which I was keen to try because Primal Scream had recorded their album, a series of 7s of dubs, and I really wanted to try one, and it was a long time till I actually found an Echo Deck. But I turned up and there was this incredible gold thing, and the guy had been in a Shadows covers band since the 60s, and this thing had been gigged for a very, very long time. I said, "What's that?" Because I thought I was getting an Echo Deck. He says, "It's an Echo Rec Youth," and it was absolutely shot. But it made sounds I've never heard another one make since. I didn't have it serviced for a very long time because of the sounds it made. They were just out of this world, and I've never heard another one sound the same. So I'm still searching for that particularly broken Echo Rec that sounds like my first one, which now works really well and sounds like an Echo Rec should, but isn't quite as the way I like it, the way I remember that first one. So this is the thing, it was this journey of discovery. So with Binsons, it was a case of I didn't really understand. I'm not a tech, and Eric Snowball, who was ESE Music, I used to ring him up and badger him, and I couldn't understand why the machines I was buying, why I couldn't just adjust the heads by moving them. And he was like, no, you need an oscilloscope, you need to be able to do this properly. I learnt a lot from Eric. He was very, very generous with his time, and when eventually I got one of his machines, it was a revelation. Early days, eBay, buying stuff, trying it out, selling it, and then as I got to know a few techs, it was a case of buy stuff that wasn't working very well, get it fixed, sell it as working. My early experiences on eBay were what informed Soundgas, because so many times people would sell things as, well, you grow to realise that untested usually means it doesn't work. But there was a lot of stuff going on where people say, "Oh, it's working perfectly" when it left here, and they just leave you with a broken thing that probably didn't work, or they didn't pack it well enough. We know that sometimes these things can go wrong, but there's a lot of that. There still is a lot of misrepresentation, and Soundgas is all about doing it right and being honest. And if we get it wrong and something does go wrong, putting it right without arguing, going, "Yep, that's on us," and that's an expensive thing to do, but and people don't see that when they see our prices. "Oh, you're charging a load of money for this." They don't see the hours of time we've put into fixing something, the years of time we've put into learning about these things and learning how to pack them properly and ship them properly, and then the cost of putting that machine right should it go wrong after we've sent it. That's what's at the heart of Soundgas. It's about doing vintage gear right, and actually, something I'm very passionate about, but not something that you see necessarily when you just see a price online. But that's not actually, that's kind of how Soundgas came to be. But what Soundgas is really about is that spirit of adventure, the joy of playing. It's play that you get with hardware, that you get from plugging things in. And sometimes in my case, it's usually not, it's usually through complete ignorance. You get new things and you plug them in and you get it wrong and something amazing happens. There are quite a few things that we now sell regularly that are not necessarily meant to be used the way I ended up using them, but that absolutely sound incredible. The most obvious one to me is the Hawk spring reverbs that pretty much were made for the domestic market in Japan and designed to be used very carefully and considered in a considered way. But if you push a lot of signal into them and turn the gain up on the mic channel, it basically sounds pretty much like a big muff. There's a glorious distortion that is, well, yeah, we love it, and they're amazing units. They also sound great when you use them properly. So yeah, Soundgas, it's about the spirit of adventure, about play, about having fun when you're creating sounds and music. So that's what I wanted to talk about this morning. Just why we do what we do. Over time we grew, and one of the things I found that I was spending most of my time driving between the various techs I knew. Some of them required a great deal of diplomatic handling, let's put it that way. So I was spending an enormous amount of time, pretty much more time was spent dealing with the techs that I worked with than doing the fun stuff. So that and us setting up our Soundgas studio and having a visit from Ed O'Brien and Flood when we set it up, and Flood talking about all the synths he couldn't get repaired, that kind of sparked us thinking, well, we ought to try and train some new techs. And that was the point at which Dr. Hugh came to us and said, I'm doing so much work for you, my accountant says I'm not really self-employed anymore. And I was like, well, do you want to not be self-employed? And he said, yeah. I said, do you want to work with us? And he was like, yeah. And as someone who'd worked on his own for quite a while, he was really happy to become part of a team, and the sort of certainty and the being allowed the chance to experiment, to design stuff, and when things went wrong, it wasn't all on him. And we took a very, very long time. Gid and I spent a long time trying to persuade James Walker that it might be a good thing to come and work at Soundgas. And happily, over the course of about 3 or 4 years, that eventually happened. And James is again an amazing, he's an incredible tech and an amazing part of the team, and also training the younger guys. Hugh, sadly, post-COVID has not been able to work, but he trained Max and Will and a little bit of Ryan. But Max trained Ryan and Will, and Max and Ryan are now training Ollie and Ewan and Job a little bit. So this thing of training the next generation of techs, because that's something that used to happen in studios. There'd be the senior tech or the engineers in the studios, or in a bigger studio they would have a technician and he would train someone else. That's not happening so much now. There aren't the resources. So Soundgas is very much about passing knowledge on, and hopefully inspiring through play and what we do, and showing people what we do and why we do it, and just sort of sparking ideas, and that's for me at the heart of this, and at the heart of why I love hardware. It's all about play and inspiration and fun. There's not enough fun, I think. Anyway, I'm about to go into a dip and I'm going to lose signal, so I'd just like to say thank you for watching, thank you for all your support and your messages, and have a good day.